It's like, I don't know if it's a good idea. Okay, cool. Yeah, looks like we're live.
It looks like we are live indeed. Okay, so Taylor, this is like the first time we've done any live streaming or collabed, just you and I, on something. So you know, we should probably take a selfie. This is a picture. This is like a moment in history. Just
it's good.
How you
Yeah,
been,
you're in for it when you have one of us on a stream. So we got double the trouble or double the pebcax. We'll find out. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. But we'll see what happens.
That'd be good. That'd be good. How have you been?
Good. Good. How about yourself? Just having fun, kind of running around with Terraform, Kubernetes, Waypoint, and all the others. So really stoked to kind of dig into those today and talk about them and kind of help people understand more what they do.
Definitely. What I might do before we get started is I might just pop onto Twitter real quick and just let people know that we are live and direct, and they do not want to miss the Pepcac show, because it's what we do, right? And you know what? To be fair, I can remember the last time I live streamed with someone was with Eric, right? And we went live and we didn't realize we were live, so we were just like
hanging and having fun.
Much, right?
Oh, like airplane food is the worst. You're like, oh, we're live.
It was so funny. All right. Okay, let's do this. Right, so essentially I have been messing around. Anyone that knows me knows I'm a kind of part-time YouTuber, and something I did on my YouTube channel was I created a web application, and it was for event-driven investment into cryptocurrencies, right? So highly controversial, I know. But yeah, I'll actually probably pop a link to that video in the chat at some point through this. But essentially, what the app does is it takes events from my Twitch channel. Again, I can drop a link to that if you want to follow me playing some games. And the event specifically that we have is when people subscribe to my Twitch channel, and that will trigger off a chain of events. So essentially what it will do is it will randomly pick a cryptocurrency from the Coinbase product book, and it will go ahead and purchase a small amount of cryptocurrency. And that's pretty much it. So the way it works is my application has to be a web application, just because of the nature of how the Twitch callback process works. It needs a callback URL. So essentially, when it sends the notification, we have some cryptographic verification to make sure that the notification did in fact come from Twitch, and there's not any kind of man-in-the-middle attacks or any other bad actors doing sneaky things in there. And then when it does that, it goes ahead and processes through the application. So if I just share my screen, I'll just give you a quick local demo and show you where we're at. And hopefully you can all see my screen. And yeah, so what I'll do is let me just see if I can get rid of this. Can I? I'll just move to the side, that'd be good. Okay, I'll just quickly run my main.go file, and that should start the web server. And there you go, we get the logs. And I just want to shout out Taylor for that log there. If you watch the YouTube video, I do admit in that video that login is terrible. So this is already a nice improvement that, when you build an application, you start it. It's nice to know that it actually has started. So great job there, Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you.
So essentially,
I used to live in the middle of the country, so we dealt a lot with we had a bunch of trees there. There were a bunch of logging companies. So, just figured that's the least we could do. Lots of maple syrup, lots of trees.
For anyone that doesn't know, Taylor is the pun king. Absolute pun king. We're going to call you Punisher from now on,
I like that. It's trademarked, but I like it. So sad about that.
Hey, didn't you used to work for Disney though, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You got the connection. You can
Yeah,
wrangle
there
some
it
kind
is.
of deal,
Know the right lawyers to talk to.
Amazing. Okay, so just to explain what's going on here. Firstly, this is all a demo environment, right? So we are using Twitch, and Twitch has quite helpfully created a CLI which helps us fake certain events. So we can fake someone subscribing to my Twitch channel, for example. So that makes life a bit easier to kind of demonstrate this workflow. And then from the Coinbase side of things, which is where we're doing the whole cryptocurrency part of this equation, we are using a public sandbox.
Whoop, I think we lost your audio. Still can't hear you. Yeah, for some reason I can't hear you, Rob. Gotcha. Like streaming is difficult. Where we could just count this as a pepcac or something on that front. But yeah, always fun, especially when getting Bluetooth stacks or wires all connected. Always a fun thing to get figured out. It's down to the wire. That's the only pun I have for you right now.
Right, so you probably can hear me now, right?
There it is. Perfect.
It probably sounds really terrible. And that is because my headphones don't seem to want to connect to my machine anymore. And normally when that happens, the only way to deal with that is to restart the Mac, which we do not want to do right now. Are you hearing yourself, by the way, Taylor? Are you hearing an echo?
Not so much, honestly. It sounds like it's in the room, but don't really hear too much of the echo.
Okay, cool. I guess we will dispense with the headphones and we will keep it pushing. We move. What can we do, right? When technology fails? But hopefully this demo doesn't fail because, if my headphones fails and then the demo fails, I think you can just call me a failure, and that's it's not really good for a Wednesday, is it? But yeah. Before I was rudely interrupted by my Mac and my headphones, what I was explaining is that this demo environment that we have is made up of a fake Twitch CLI thing that it fakes basically Twitch events. And from the Coinbase side of things, we're using a sandbox environment, so it's not real money. The transactions are not real. However, if we wanted to turn this into production, we would just switch to the main URL and give it an actual API token for my actual Coinbase account. But we're not going to do that because I'm not rich. So yeah, what we have here is the server is started on the left, and here I've got a terminal on the right. And essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run a command on the Twitch CLI to fake an event, and it should work pretty much, right? So there we go. If I just run this command here, so like I said, it's just a Twitch CLI, and it's going to send a notification to my web app. And it's saying connection refused. Oh, I know why. It's because I need to put a port in there. This is another one of the refactors that Taylor did, and he'll explain why shortly. And there you go. You can see that it sent a notification to my web application. And on the left, you can see the logs here. You can see that we received a notification from Twitch that this user, there's a user ID there, subscribed to my Twitch channel. And then it went ahead and randomly selected Bitcoin USD, and it's given us the order number for the purchase. So if we look here on the top right of my screen, if I refresh this, we should hopefully see another transaction, though sometimes the sandbox environment can be a bit flaky, so sometimes it doesn't show things, but fingers crossed, we'll see an additional transaction here. And we don't, which is the kind of flakiness I was talking about. Let me just make sure that we are talking about the right one. And yes, we are. And if I go to field orders, we don't seem to see it, which is, it's weird. Like the thing about this sandbox environment is sometimes, even though it will give you the order ID, it doesn't actually reflect it in the UI all the time. I can't really explain it. They don't even put anything in their documentation as to why that's a limitation, or even the fact it is a limitation. But what we can say is that we've got the order ID here, and that's come from Coinbase, so we know that's worked. So that's nice. I have this local application. The old cliche where it worked on my laptop is kind of where we're at the moment. But what I need to do is I need to package this up and get it deployed to our Kubernetes cluster. And Taylor here, for anyone that doesn't know, is a Kubernetes whiz. He's the release engineer, the lead release engineer for Kubernetes 1.19. Am I correct there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a lot of fun. It's obviously one of my favorite releases. I know that there are newer ones, but 1.19 has a special place in my heart.
Hey, don't show us the 1.19 on the live stream. So yeah, Taylor knows a ton about Kubernetes, way more than me. So I guess what we're going to do for this process is Taylor is, I guess, going to be the DevOps engineer. He's going to help us package this up and deploy it to Kubernetes using Waypoint, I guess. So yeah, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to just enter class. You are Sensei, I am nothing. And, this blank sheet of paper right here shall be filled with knowledge and notes.
Awesome. Well, with that, it was not actually recess and it was not actually a class, but I really did like show and tell when it was time in grade school for sure. So let's get things kicked off and take a look at everything. So I have actually a couple of things to show you today. So like Rob said, it's a very common plight that you'll probably find yourself in as you develop out your applications, right? I have an application. It's time to run it. I've got the code working, but I don't know how or where to deploy it. So let's get that fixed up. Luckily enough, I have a repository called AKS in action. So like Rob said, I really like Kubernetes. And so I've gotten a few examples on how to run that within some major public clouds. I've got one for EKS and I've got one for AKS, and the one for GCP, GKE is incoming, but we'll cover that later. So for any of you that want to follow along or use this in the future, I'm going to go ahead and share this in the Twitch chat. If you have any questions as we kind of go through this, please feel free to raise it, and I'll be more than happy to kind of walk you through it or answer some questions there. So really quickly, I'll just walk through this and kind of show you what is going on. I really like Visual Studio Code in terms of showing how to work with various things when it comes to your code. Let me go ahead and close that, and I'll kind of walk through all of the moving parts, so to speak, when this with setting up this cluster. I don't have a Kubernetes cluster set up yet, but in the real world, that's you might have one set up, but if you don't, I'm here to help you out with that. And the good news is it only takes about 5 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and kick this off, and we're going to do a Terraform YOLO here. Absolutely recommend not doing this at home unless you've tested your code, of course, and in which case that's totally fine. But definitely recommend more approvals, more gates, and more oversight as you spin up things that aren't demos. So go ahead and let this run in the background and I'll walk through some of the code. So I'm going to actually start off with the Terraform required providers. So I'm actually using modules from the Terraform registry, which I had up in another view here. So if you're working with Terraform, I absolutely recommend checking out the Terraform registry. So when it comes to, say you want to start using Azure, Azure RM, you could take a look at the documentation. You could get a sense as to what the latest version of this Terraform provider is. Terraform is nothing without its providers. It's a language, as HCL, but it really isn't anything without each of those providers. So how do you work with those providers? Read the documentation and check some things out there. If you want to map this to different types of compute or storage or databases, you can take a look here as well. So if I were to type in database, admit I'm not as familiar with most of the Azure offerings, but I'm becoming more and more familiar each day. So say that we wanted to take a look at Cosmos DB. We could take a look at the resources and then find out how to work with these and set these up. This works really well for each of those specific resources within Terraform. But if we wanted to, say, spin up an AKS cluster and use a public Terraform module, this is what we're going to want to use, something like the AKS module or a network module within Azure. The benefit to this is that you don't have to spin up each of those atomic parts and resources on your own. You can use things that have been, so this has been provisioned 28.3 thousand times. So you have that level of certainty that, okay, people are using this, and that high certainty, this is coming directly from the Azure team and is maintained in the open source space. So I could actually even click on this and take a look at the source code for this module and understand everything that it does and kind of read some of the finer points of the module and kind of learn how to use it that aren't listed here. So that's where a lot of these resources come in. Kubernetes, template, and Azure RM, local, random, etc. The thing of note is taking a look at the bottom here. So when you work with Terraform, you have Terraform State, and where you store that state is very important. If you store it locally on your machine, it works, but it's not the best idea. What would happen if you dropped your machine or you have an issue or the files get corrupted? Not the best situation to be in, right? So the best thing to do with your Terraform state is have it not on your machine. One of the easiest ways to make sure that's not on your machine and make sure that it's encrypted and kind of good to work with is by using Terraform Cloud. They say always use your company's cloud. So but I'm more than happy to use Terraform Cloud in this capacity. Terraform Cloud's really nice because there's a free tier, so you can actually scale with you or your team. If it's nice to have it be free, in that you don't have to worry about putting in a credit card or anything like that, and you can kind of get to see what it looks like and see if it is a good fit for you. If it's not, no biggie. That's totally fine. You can store that in storage buckets within all of the major clouds, or there are many other ways to work with that as well. So with that, some things that I've done behind the scenes are set up my credentials within Azure, so I don't need to list them or have Terraform enact off of my machine. I can just store those credentials here, and then I could even give access to Rob if you wanted to make some changes, scale up the cluster, name it something differently, what have you. If we wanted to version and take a look at those changes, I don't have to provide those sensitive credentials anymore. And I could just kind of invite Rob to that and get his help with scaling up some of this infrastructure as it makes sense to do so. This also takes care of, go ahead.
Taylor is a lot more sensible than to give access to Rob to these types of things because of things broken. And this is one of the great things, he can not give me access as well, which means I'm not going to break anything. But essentially, as I go through this class and I learn from Taylor, then maybe tomorrow I might not break stuff, and I can get access then. So yeah, it's really good, the workspace permission side of things.
It's really great, and it's, you know, I think that we've all been in a place before where we've either asked and given credentials via Slack or something like that, or email even, and that's not that's not the best place to be either, right? Because then you don't want to create a paper trail of things like that, or say someone were to leave or something like that, then it becomes a difficult thing to manage. What's nice too is that we won't cover that in this session today, but you do have the ability to use Terraform. It gets even more, you know, meta, and I'm not talking about Facebook. It gets more meta than this in that you can use the Terraform Enterprise provider for Terraform Cloud. You can even use data sources and source things in and put in credentials that make sense, or update them, or integrate with Vault. There's again a lot of options available to you, and why it makes this a great tool that you can again get started with, you know, today for free. And I really like that because it gives me that ability to roll back, to put the right Terraform version that I want, etc. So I can actually see it's finished in the background, and I haven't even run through everything just yet. So I'll kind of do a little bit of a speed run. Again, if you have any questions, more than happy to answer those on the fly. And also want to say hi to Tracy in the audience. And yeah, we haven't found a way to replicate the spray bottle for when I make a pun that no one laughs at. But you know, I haven't hooked up something to an Arduino to spray me on the stream. That's something else we can cover later. But did want to give you an update on that, Tracy. Cool. So that is where we're storing our Terraform state, is in the cloud. We're spinning up things in the cloud. We're storing our state in the cloud. Fantastic. Next up, so like I said before, we want to work with the Azure RM provider. And you'll see that in this repository, this is quite empty. So like we showed before, we're actually using Terraform's ability to pass through environment variables to work with this provider. So we don't actually need to put in plain text those credentials, which is fantastic. Before we can spin up our Azure Kubernetes service, we have to create a network, right? It needs a place to interact with the World Wide Web, and I'm sure Rob wants to be able to actually contact his application once we have it spun up. Do not fear, do not fret. We've got that covered here. So we're using the network module. We've passed through some of the prerequisites to get this up, running, and started. If you're curious or want to dig in more to this later, you can check out these documentation links that I have in here as well. So we have our network. Azure groups everything by something called resource groups. So I've also got that one created as well. You'll see I have var dot. For those unfamiliar with Terraform variables, you can find all of them here. In here, I'm setting the project name, AKS in action, region, West US. I'm based in Los Angeles, so this is closest to me. And then the Kubernetes version. Yes, I know it's not Kubernetes 119, but 121.2 is one of the later versions that's available in this data center, which, you know, latest is most usually best. So it's good to go with that.
I think at this point, we have to just pause and just have a brief moment and just say, oh. 1.19, where art thou?
It's like parting is such sweet sorrow, but yeah, such is life with software releases and cutting releases. Just like okay, getting misty. All right, okay, good. I think I'm ready. Next, last but certainly not least, comes our Azure Kubernetes Service cluster. So we have our version. And this module is nice because you can set your Kubernetes version and your orchestrator version. Kubernetes has a control plane, and you can set the version of those nodes, but that's abstracted away from you, so you don't have to worry about those coming up and going down. The worker nodes you do, which is what matches to the Kubernetes version. So my personal take, my hot take on this is that you'd always want these to be the same. This is nice because it gives you that atomic ability to upgrade your control plane first and then your worker nodes if you wanted to do that. But there are some different tricks and tactics that you can use to do that within your Terraform code that aren't usually done in a one in like a one execution workflow. I would recommend breaking that up, spinning up your cluster separately from your configuration. And that's how we recommend it at HashiCorp, is because if you try to put too many things together, it makes it very easy for things to go wrong, or misconfiguration to happen, or an upgrade to happen and having the wrong credentials and sign-ins are broken. It can get kind of wild on that front. We'll see that we have 3 agents that we're spinning up with this. That's the worker node count. I did a couple other edits too, like change the OS disk size, the disk that it comes with initially, up to 100 from 50 initially. And then just as a security, put a depends on here to make sure that the network comes up before this does, even though we've specified module network. Terraform is smart enough in just about all cases, but I'll say 99 point, let's go with 5 nines. In that many cases, as far as interpreting, okay, I need this before I can spin this up. But in some cases, APIs don't work the way that you expect. So if you want that extra bit of security and assurance, depends on is going to help you out. That really, really great feature on that front. So with all that said, I know that was a lot of talking. I know it was pretty quick. Again, please feel free to ask questions if you have any, but we should have our Kubernetes cluster. And we can see that Terraform says that we're done, so we must be done. Let's check this out. I'm going to go ahead and clear my terminal. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And then let's do, I need to get the credentials for this cluster. And I can actually do that this is a demo. We're going to be walking through this today. So let's do that. I'm going to use the Azure CLI. I already have the Kubernetes kubectl or Cuddle or kube control. I have all of the variants. I have all of those installed. It's really just one binary, and you can call it what you want. So I have the credentials installed, and now I should be able to do kube control, get nodes. For those of you that are familiar with Kubernetes shorthand, I'm going to walk through that really quick too. I've aliased kube control to just the letter K because typing less is awesome. And then we can use get again. And instead of typing out nodes, which is like 5 characters, oh my gosh, we can just type out 2 and we can get the exact same feedback. So if you see me typing something that's a little bit short, I'm happy to kind of expand upon what that actually is, but just my muscle memory is trained for the shorthand. So happy to talk through that. As we can see, we have all of these nodes up and running. That means our Kubernetes cluster is working as we expect. So that's great. So already for Rob, I know he's been waiting about 10 minutes, 15 minutes while I've been talking through this to get that cluster up and running. We have a job to do. We got to get this cluster up and running for Rob. So we have the cluster running, which is great. What we're going to want to do is, so if I do this is a Kubernetes get pods. We can see that we don't have any right here. I've got another Kubernetes helper, kubectx and kubeNS. One is context, one is namespace. So let's see what namespace we're in. Kubernetes uses namespaces to separate out each of your kinds of workloads. So let's go ahead and create one actually. And let's call it InvestoBot. I think that's what I used. If I didn't, I can always change that, which is great. So now if I run this kubeNS, I can see that. Let's actually switch. We'll keep this here for now because we have to do something next. So we have our cluster, we have our application. How do we get the application onto the cluster? And oh, Rob, I've totally forgot. You're going to need something called a Docker file, right? I didn't even see one in there. So we'll see how we get it to production or dev in this case. So you've written your application, you have all of the pieces. How do we get these things connected? So I've got an answer for that too. And that answer is Waypoint. So you can install Waypoint with Homebrew or your package manager of your choice. We can see that I'm using version 0.6.1. Version 0.6 came out with a lot of Kubernetes features, ability to interact with ingress and better support overall for Kubernetes and the way that the background runners run and supporting GitOps workflows. It's honestly one of the most action-packed releases I've seen here since I've been at HashiCorp. So it's been really fun to see that in Terraform 1.0, of course. So let's go ahead and get Waypoint installed onto our Kubernetes cluster so we can actually start to use that. I'm going to go ahead and install. I'm going to specify the platform, which is Kubernetes. Waypoint is smart enough to know that since I'm running this on my machine to get this installed, it's going to use my latest Kubernetes configuration, which is the cluster that we just spun up. So we're going to be installing that into the right spot. And then we'll accept this terms, that the TOS term, terms and services, because of a feature that Waypoint has called the URL rewrite service. So you can actually show off different releases of your software and then provide out a wonderfully named link for people to actually check out before you actually release something. Waypoint's nice because it allows for you to build, deploy, and then release something. Deploy and release sound really similar and are typically used interchangeably, but deploying is in Waypoint is the act of pushing that code up to the place in which you want to run it. Releasing is like shifting over or doing a canary release or pointing your load balancer at the correct deployment that you want to work with. So
I just asked, when you're,
Please.
so this is a Waypoint server that you're installing, is that right?
That's correct. That's correct.
And is it using your Kubernetes config file to know where to install it?
Exactly.
And you didn't even have to tell it that. It's just using your default config file.
Exactly.
Oh man, that is sweet. That is really, really sweet. I love that.
It's really nice. It's so Waypoint kind of its intention is to try to meet you where you're at. And so if you want to, get this, you're new to this, you kind of want to test it or kick the tires, you want to stand it up directly via your CLI, we can help you with that. Waypoint in 0.6 came up with a Helm chart too. So if you want to configure the server and use Terraform to do that and not use Waypoint directly, or you have a process with Terraform that makes more sense for your teams, you can use that as well. So that's quite nice. So boom, just like that. Yeah, as you can see, Rob, it was pretty simple to get this set up. So let's go ahead and open up Waypoint and see what's inside. Hopefully some holiday gifts. Hopefully a couple of application deployments.
Abracadabra.
Waypoint's nice too because it supports OpenID Connect. It's that I won't have time to get into that today, but you can use your favorite OpenID Connect provider to gate access to this. Again, this is a demo, so I'm actually generating a token on the fly using Waypoint UI Authenticate, and then going into the UI itself. So that's why you saw this, not secure. I don't have this routed through a proper, fully qualified domain name or anything like that. Again, it is just a demo. But as you can see, we still secure enough to actually run demos, and this isn't open to the world because we have that authentication, that token system in place. So yeah, as you can see, we have Waypoint server up and running. If you want to see that in Kubernetes, I'm happy to show that to you as well. Let me clear this out. Yes, this is correct. Okay, so we can see we have the Waypoint server and something called the Waypoint Runner. I'm going to try to do like a stretch goal here at the end where we can see if we can get a GitOps workflow set up. I think that we might run into some trouble when it comes to the Docker Hub authentication piece, because I just haven't tried that out yet, but excited to give that a go. But Waypoint server will handle all of the API calls needed for Waypoint to do all the things it needs to do. Waypoint Runner is something that is within Waypoint, and it's an on-demand kind of process. So if you have a GitOps workflow, it will handle polling for your repository. It will also take stock of what's actually happening on the deployments, passing back the status, and you can actually see if your application's up, and kind of get those status checks, which is really nice. And then you can actually set configuration or environment variables or other further configuration as well. So I could talk for hours about that, but we'll spare you some of the details unless there's something that you want to talk about. So we can see Waypoint's up and running, and that's fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and switch into this InvestoBot namespace, and then we can kind of get started with our application deployment. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to close out this Terraform example, and I'm actually going to jump into the nice thing about Kubernetes too is that as you're changing these contexts and things like that, as you switch into your different shells and terminal emulator screens, that also will persist. So I'll be able to do this, and we'll see that we are in the right namespace. So nice to be able to have that ability to jump between. Okay, so we have, let's go ahead and take a look at the code. So Rob kind of walked through the code and showed you everything at a high level. One of the things I snuck into a PR just a couple hours ago is this Waypoint HCL configuration. And so let's walk through what this is. Oh, why don't I share with all of you the that URL as well, or if I could get your help with that, Rob, in terms of sharing out your URL for that GitHub project, that'd be fantastic. So if you want to follow along at home,
everybody. Shared it a while ago. I'll share it again though, just in case
like
you're new
magic.
to the chat and missed it. DevOps engineers, they're so slow, aren't they?
I love that. Yeah. So you've got a neural link too. We're communicating. You're getting the memos. That's all. That's all good. So Waypoint configuration. The way that this works is that there's a couple key things to call out. In this demo, we're going to show quite a few offerings that Waypoint has available to you. First off, you have to give every project a name, right? Okay, so for this, we're going to go investor bot because we want to get all the crypto we can at the right times that make sense for us. When it comes to using Waypoint, Waypoint has input variables similar to Terraform. You'll kind of notice this nomenclature if you've worked with Terraform before. We'll specify a variable, we'll give it a name, and then it will be a block. We can specify a default, which makes sense here. We want it to be InvestiBot, and a description for if we pick this up later in the future, whether it's future you or a different team member, you get a sense as to what this is, right? Next up is going to be our image. So I didn't put in a default for this because I like using my Docker Hub for right now. This is a demo, but at some point in time, we'll want to move this to production, and we won't want to use my handle for Docker Hub. So we'll want to switch that out, and I'll show you how this works here in just a little bit. But we will need to specify an actual image name for this to get built against and pushed up to a specific location. Next up, this we'll tackle here in just a little bit. I definitely want to go through a couple steps here, but Waypoint allows for dynamic configuration and allows for a few places for you to source that configuration. So if you have a feature flag, if you have an environment variable, if you have things that you want to pass in and then dynamically have it get looked up, this is going to be one of your best friends. And we'll do that here when we set up our credentials for Coinbase to actually plug into all of the things that we want. Okay, cool. Now we get to the fun stuff. Now it becomes the where we go through the application block and kind of understanding what does Waypoint do. So again, Rob, it's a bummer that there's no Docker file here because that just makes it easier to build this image. But you know what? Waypoint's awesome because you don't have to have one. You can Waypoint uses cloud native build packs and takes a look at all of the things inside of your project. If you're using Node, Ruby, Python, if you're using a package manager of some sort, that's what the cloud native build packs are going to look for. So we can see this Go mod, the cloud native build pack will see that, go, oh, this is a Go project. And that's the kind of image that I'm going to build and create to get this up and running. So we can see we're using cloud native build packs here. And then this is the registry where I'm going to specify some things here in a little bit. Next up, we're going to want to deploy to Kubernetes. Now, you don't have to deploy to Kubernetes. You could deploy to AWS Lambda, to Docker, there are a whole bunch of plugins that Waypoint has that you can deploy to, Nomad, what have you. There's a lot of options. And then you can set up the specificities of your deployment here as well. You'll see that we're using our namespace. We have a root path for this to actually do like a health check and make sure that the service is up and running.
Right there. What was that word you just used? I can't even say it.
I've been saying it 5 times fast all day. Yeah, specificity.
I'm never going to attempt that. I'm going to practice. That's my homework tonight. We'll report back tomorrow.
Yeah, it is not an actual city, just specificity.
And that's why you're the punisher.
It's like, yeah. So we want to deploy to Kubernetes. These are all of our details here. And then finally, we want to release this. And so here we also specify the namespace. And then typically we don't have a load balancer set up to handle this, but we want to tell Waypoint, hey, let's just do that, right? Let's just go that final mile or kilometer and figure out how to expose this to the world. Typically within Kubernetes, you'd want to use something called an ingress controller. You would set up an Nginx ingress or an ALB or traffic. There are a lot of different ingress options available to you, and that's a really great way to integrate with this. But again, this is just a humble demo, and so we're just going to open this up with a load balancer to keep things easy. Cool. So again, talked quite a bit. Hopefully I didn't lose you. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Let's walk through some of the Waypoint commands and kind of get acclimated with Waypoint. So we have our server. It's up and running and it works. Now let's actually get this working. And let me pull up in all the right context so you can actually see all this stuff happen in real time. Okay, so we have our configuration all done and good to go. So the first thing that we're going to want to do to both lint and make sure that our Waypoint configuration is typed correctly is we're going to want to run Waypoint Init. So we'll go ahead and do that. It will connect to the Waypoint server. And then here in just a short moment, you'll see that under projects, boom, we have InvestorBot. Cool. That was pretty easy to create a great project. If we click into this, we'll see that there's nothing going on, and that's okay because we haven't run anything yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Waypoint supports, I'll go ahead and just type in Waypoint so you can see so here's the whole host of things that you have available to you as you work with Waypoint. One of the easiest ways to get started is that instead of typing build, deploy, release, if you were building out a CI/CD pipeline, you could use that, but let's just go ahead and do Waypoint up. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot something. So what we need to do here is, like I said before, I need to specify the image name, and I haven't done that yet. So where the heck do I set that up? Let's go back to the project. Let's manage these settings, and then let's take a look at these input variables. Okay, cool. So we'll go in here, and I believe that was image, and then I want only Dole and investor. I think I typed that correctly. Okay, cool. So that should work. I am logged in on Docker with my machine, and that's where I'm executing all these commands. So I should be able to run all these things. So let's go ahead and do Waypoint up. And now we should see that work successfully. I'm going to go back into this where you'll see all of these things get streamed directly to that interface. So if you like the command line, we've got you covered. If you like the UI, or you want to share your progress along with your team, you can do that too. And you'll see that each of these tabs here, and if we click into builds, we can actually watch this in real time, and it will match what I actually see within my terminal. Again, we didn't have a Docker file to go with, but that doesn't matter at the end of the day. There's definitely a process to, if you want to shrink the container image size or kind of work with that or tidy that up, you can do that too. You can bring your own Docker file. Just because I'm not doing that doesn't mean you can't, but makes it a lot easier to get started, right? Especially when your main workflow might be just developing out of that application and trying to get a sense of, does this work? Does this have all the pieces and components and things that I need? So we have our image built. It's pushing to Docker right now, or actually that's all done. And it's trying to
give us a Docker file at the end of it, or it just doesn't even need that. It's just going to create an image without a Docker file.
Exactly. Yeah, the Cloud Native build pack will actually build out your application for you, create that image asset, and then push it up to the registry that you've specified. It does work locally too. If say you have a Kubernetes cluster running on your machine and you just want to use that more than that will work. There's a repository called Waypoint Examples on the HashiCorp organization, and that there are so many examples on kind of how to make that happen too. But yeah, you absolutely don't need it whatsoever.
Amazing. What I'll do is I'll look that up and I'll post a link for Waypoint examples in the chat. Cool.
I'm going to go ahead and paste in our application URL too. So if we can see that we got our actual release URL, which is here. So if I were to click into this, you would see it in this tab here. So we have welcome to the Twitch InvestoBot. And we'd also get the same thing here. So if we click on this, so what's the difference between these two? They are the same application, so not much. but the name. So this is the reverse proxy service that is going to assign a fun name. I really like this one. This is a great one for this demo. And then this is the final released version. So we can, right now, Kubernetes is set such that it only supports that one release, but you can expand that, if you want to keep like the last n-3 releases or 2 or whatever it is, you can do that as well. So as we increment this, and this goes v1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that will point to those previous releases, but typically you won't want to keep those around. So we've deployed this successfully, but if you have an eagle eye, you'll notice that we're getting some errors in here, and they correlate to the Coinbase secrets and things like that. So why is this? Well, that's because we haven't. So if you'll remember, when I went through this dynamic configuration, all of these items, these environment variables, map to a Kubernetes config map. And the config map is called Coinbase. And if we take a look, the URL autocomplete, I forget, it always takes a second, but we'll see if this goes here. So if we take a look at config maps, we'll see that we don't actually have any in there, except for just the root cert, which is going to be pretty standard. So let's go ahead and I'm going to go in here. I'm actually going to pull this off to the side just because I have some sensitive variables to put in here. Typically, we'd want to use something like Vault or something of that nature for this, but we can we won't cover that in this thread, but we can definitely cover that later at some point in time. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the next step, is to add Vault to this whole process as well. And then in certain instances, as we expand this application, we're going to make the application more Vault aware, because we're going to start writing things to a database. We'll start using some of the secrets engine. But we'll talk about that in the next stream.
That's no secret, and we'll be happy to share it. All
so
right,
yeah,
so
don't do this in production, whatever you do, especially with Coinbase secrets. You lose a lot of money. Yeah.
If you're running a giveaway or you want to give away crypto, absolutely, totally fine. Just it's all about your intention, right? That's all that matters. Awesome. So we can see that we're getting, what's nice is Waypoint gives you immediately, what's the number one thing, Rob, you probably want to know about what's going on with your application, right? And we talked about logs before. So Waypoint gives you that really quick feedback loop on what's happening with my application. What's nice about the dynamic configuration is that no matter where the source is that you specify, it's constantly looking at that to see if things have changed. So the moment that we apply this config map, we should see these errors go away, and the application will be reloaded, and it won't even do so within Kubernetes. It won't show that the pod has restarted beyond what it currently is at. So we'll see 0, and then the age of the pod is all good. So we've applied that, and then here shortly, boom, we can see that the environment variables changed. Sorry, this is really small, but it says environment variables changed, sending new child command. It's restarting the process. And then we can see that the server has restarted back up. But if we'll go ahead and check this, no restarts. So it's actually encapsulating that and also passing through all of those environment variables directly through that process in which Waypoint's entry point has set up. So we let Waypoint build the image. It injects a custom entry point binary to facilitate this, connect with Waypoint, and kind of give you all this greatness. We can see that here, we have everything available and running, and that's what these visuals are. And then also, another fun thing that we learned yesterday while kind of going through this and taking a look at things, or clear this out, Kubernetes lets you connect to your pods, right? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go bash in here. And if I run these environment variables, we won't see all of those secret variables that we put in here before in terms of the Coinbase secrets. Waypoint does, I won't show you here, but Waypoint exec bash, boom, I'm directly inside of the container and that Waypoint process. So now if I were to type env here, you would see all those secrets, which is really handy too. So you don't have to worry about it, it's inherently secure. You don't have to worry about people seeing things, or if they are able to get into that pod to see that, they would have to actually get access to this process. to be able to see those environment variables. So again, we have we've talked a lot. I'm noticing a trend here. I'll get really excited and then just kind of go off and be really excited to kind of expand upon
There's
all of these
a lot
things.
to get excited about. The first thing is zero downtime. You know, as we change things, as we rotate, no downtime. You know, second thing is that, you know, in terms of logs, I don't have to go off to something like Raygun and Eagle Eye start looking for things. It's just right there. You know, the same thing I'm using to make the deployment, it's the same thing that's going to show me all the application logs. So I can see why your hairs are standing up and why you're just like,
it's really great. It's nice to finally be able to have a tool that takes you from, you know, like a weekend project or just like an idea that you have that you worked on, you know, for a couple of hours or whatever, and you actually want to see it living, you know, and nice to not have it on your machine, you know, and to kind of hook things up there. So cool. Awesome. So with that, Rob, actually, I'd like to turn it back over to you, because I think that, so what have we done? We've taken the repository, we've built an image, we've pushed that image up to Kubernetes, we've built out a Kubernetes cluster, we've gotten all these things together, and now I can actually turn this back over to Rob and say, all right, Rob, here is your URL. I'll go ahead and load that again just to show you that everything's up and running. I've got nothing up my sleeves. As you can see, yeah, no child processes, nothing like that. Just root PIDs. Okay, there we go. And I'll go ahead and share this to you in. Where's the best place to share this to you? I'll share that to you via. Perfect. Just Slack that over to you. Cool. So cool. So that is going to be the. So that gets us all set up and running and going. We can actually keep looking at these logs. So like Rob said, you know, he went through and purchased these things within Coinbase. So I can actually, however you want to do this, Rob, I'm totally down. Either I can show the logs or I can turn it back over to you to kind of show that process.
So if you keep that screen on, it should, as soon as I trigger the same thing, so the same demo we did earlier on, instead of the logs appearing on the left side of my screen, if we keep looking at Taylor's screen, we should see the logs there, right? Hopefully it works. These fingers are crossed. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to type with these crossed fingers, but I shall do my best. Right, so let me just grab this URL that Taylor has so graciously provided me with, and we are just going to run this command. Question, do I have to run that, do I have to specify the port 3000 for this to work?
So great question. So for this, so within Kubernetes already occupies port 80 just to handle some background processes and things like that. And that's why we needed to make that change. Within Waypoint, we actually, where's the repository? That's fine. So within Waypoint, we actually specify the service port is 3000, but when we expose this to the world, we expose it as port 80. So you don't need anything there. It's all good to go. You know, you could, again, set up a Kubernetes ingress and set up automatic TLS termination and get, you know, your secure endpoint. But again, we can do that at a different time. But yeah, so for all intents and purposes, you're good with port 80 and just that IP. It should be good.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is the moment of truth. I'm going to fake a Twitch event, and hopefully we can see some logs. That looks great. So it looks like it has, we've got the notification from Twitch, and it's gone ahead and randomly selected Bitcoin USD, though I was expecting to see the order number appear there. What I would do is have a quick look and see if it appears on the UI, which we already know sometimes that is a bit hit and miss as to whether it does so or not, but it does. It does appear on the UI. Not quite sure why the log isn't coming up with the order ID, but the point is it actually went through. We can, you know, that's probably an application thing that I need to look into, but essentially, it works is the key thing. It worked on my laptop, you know, as developers, it worked on my laptop. It definitely did work on my laptop. And now it's working in Azure on Kubernetes. And no Docker files needed. We just needed to go through the steps that Taylor went through with our Waypoint config file. And yeah, I am ready to face the world and spend money every time you subscribe to my Twitch channel. Thank you. Yeah, this is absolutely amazing. I've learned so much just through this process here. And, as a developer, so, I kind of did the old school, where the developers, you're the operations team, we've built the app, yeah, you take care of deploying it, right? We want to be a bit more DevOps here. So now we have this Waypoint configuration file in the repository. I can literally just Waypoint up every time I build my application. I change something, I want to just deploy the new version, I can do that, Waypoint up. Mate, this is really DevOps, isn't it?
It's really nice.
Feedback.
It's really nice. Yeah. It's one thing, and we might be getting close on time here, but if you wanted to make this follow like a GitOps flow, again, this won't work just because I haven't prepped the authentication to the Docker Hub entity ultimately. You could just plug in your repository here, give it your branch name that you want here. If it needs to, if you broke out your projects via different directories, you could even specify that here and create multiple projects based off of a single repository, and then have that listen. And then so I could even remove myself from this process and completely automate it and leave it up to Rob, following a GitOps workflow and deploy to Kubernetes, which is really nice.
So all I do is just push to whatever branch we've set up there, and that's it. It will.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. Even if I wanted to say, like, let me check out a change before I, again, don't recommend that you do this, but just to kind of underscore a point is, so let's say I go in here, and if I were to take a look at the web server within Go, let me go up here, and we have this. We have this welcome to the Twitch InvestoBot. We could even add in a line like, it is Wednesday, and just leave it like that. And then, like Rob said, it's as simple as Waypoint up. And then we do this, we could see it build again. We could go back to the UI and take a look. We could see it's building here. And then this is all, this is all streamed live and in real time. So you actually get to see as each of these different steps, the process go, we see all of these things get pushed to our environment. So this is running, it's building the image, and then it's looking like it's nearing the end here. And it's really quick too. I think that Go, this is the first Go project that I've packaged up with Waypoint, and it's just been, for all intents and purposes, lightning fast, and not the connector. And it's been really nice to see everything get pushed up at this level of speed too. Some projects take a little bit longer to compile and to get together. If you're using a compiled language, obviously it's going to be a little bit faster, as well as the actual place which you're deploying it to can take a little bit of time too. I've done some Ruby applications on AWS and used Lambda as the end place, which you get logs for too, which was a difficult feature to implement, but really nice to have that. We can see that we're pushing this up here, and then as soon as this is ready, this is the old message that didn't let us know what day it was. We'll go ahead and wait just a little bit longer. That should come up pretty quickly. Give it back.
While we wait, I have another question. So I've written some tests for my application. Is this doing anything with those tests, or does it have the capability to kind of run those tests, I guess, before doing the deployment?
Good question. So right now it doesn't. And that's kind of where you can get creative with how you want your Waypoint continuous integration and deployment workflow to be. So we could, if we wanted to, we could implement a like GitHub Actions pipeline where we do each of these steps separately, or we, if we wanted to lint this, for example, like let's make sure the tests pass before this goes in. We could either implement that at the GitHub Actions level, like when an incoming pull request comes in, or we could kind of put that before the deployment process, like, or even the build process, or after, wherever we want to. We're able to kind of take those atomic steps and layer them exactly the way in which we want. So no native test support just yet, but we could certainly put that into our CI/CD workflow. And something to think about. You can create Waypoint plugins as well. So that might be, honestly, that might be a good one to think on and to talk through.
Absolutely. And the plugins, is it just like the rest of the HashiCorp projects? It's all written in Go, and we could just pretty much go ahead and just do whatever we need.
Exactly. So yeah, here are some of the plugins that exist right now. The Waypoint URL is waypointproject.io, which I'll go ahead and throw here in the chat. Really, obviously, a really great place to get started to learn about the project is this website. Like, of course, that's an obvious thing to say. But also, if you want to take a look at learn.hashicorp.com, there are a whole bunch of really good lessons to understand and get more acclimated with Waypoint as well. I'll go ahead and copy that as well, just if anyone wants a good jumping off point to a good entry point into the project. This is a great place. And then you can see, whether you're dealing with Kubernetes or your favorite cloud here, there are quite a few options on that front too.
This is absolutely amazing. I just think it's fantastic that in an hour, we've taken a local application and managed to deploy Kubernetes, an entire Kubernetes cluster, and package and deploy our application to that. And I've learned the whole process. And as a developer, a lot of the intricacies of the things that Taylor has explained, I don't even need to understand, to be honest with you. I just need to know that when I run Waypoint up, this is what's going to happen. And now I know that I can build my own plugin. Maybe when I get some time, I'll have a look at seeing if there's a way we can integrate tests into that. But in the meantime, we'll just plug it into our existing CI/CD pipeline, and that will run the tests for us. But this is fantastic. Taylor, thank you so much for showing us the way. Like Mandalorian, this is the way.
I can't wait to watch your it'll be fun to watch your plugin progress, because it'll be a test of character and characters as you work through your Go code. So it'll be interesting.
No, this has been great. This has been great. So just before we leave, next steps for this application, which we will be bringing to a live stream near you soon. It sounds like a cinema. Cool. We want to be a bit more secure, I think. Taylor had to move one screen off the stream to be able to put in some sensitive details. Essentially, we don't want to do that. We'd rather just rely on HashiCorp Vault to do that. So we'll look at how we can plumb that in. I'll probably rope Taylor's help in to integrate Vault with Waypoint. And then I'll tell you next steps from there, but I think that's the next thing is like we are able to have a developer workflow that we can just continue iterating over, which is why this step was important. So once again, thank you for being a great DevOps engineer and enabling us as developers. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for teaching us. And I guess we will catch you on the next one, peeps.
Awesome. Thank you all for showing up. This is fantastic. Great to hear from you. And thank you so much, Rob, for inviting me. This is a lot of fun. Definitely looking forward to more things in the future. Keeping it secure and keeping things deployed.
Thank you so much, Sensei. Listen, folks, have a great evening if you're same time zone as me. Great morning if you're in Taylor's time zone. Wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Thank you so much. Take care and peace.
Thanks, everybody.